Another trip around in Imperial. Seen some shaking going on. This has to move. Okay, so you see the taxation and movement, etc., that's been happening. The French ran back and grabbed the Spanish territories, drove the Italians out of there. The English are building up quite a force. Pretty much everybody's just building up at this point. Their forces. Nobody's made a serious move other than the Franco-Italian engagement. But we are seeing a lot of playing with the shares. So, without further ado, let's look at what shook down. Now the Italian player has grabbed France, which pretty much ends that war and allows. They're not really able to help each other much, but it does close up a gap, and now the French can concentrate perhaps on England or holding what they have. Likewise, the German player ran back and grabbed Russia again. Pile of money. We got two investors now. One who just happened, and he hasn't been able to do anything about it. But the other one's been just piling up shares in all kinds of things, and we're going to see how well that works out. I've always thought that that would be a good deal to buy certificates, but the low-cost ones, because they have the best return. But not having control of the countries is something of a penalty, and it's really a bonus when you can get two countries like these guys have. So somebody just being an investor may be giving too much of a bonus to somebody else. French and British grabbed some taxes, boosted themselves up to the lead with Germany, but Germany's right ready to hit another taxation. And they've positioned themselves grabbing a little bit more territory, Sweden and the Baltic. Remember, the German player owns Russia as well, so what he takes there, especially from this navy, which was just produced, Russia did a production turn, is points that he could be getting from someone else, but that's okay. He wants to get the German points right now, early. Even if he owns more of Russia and could lose Germany, it still seems worth it to get the big boost when he can, rather than try to delay things. You can always see what happens. We're also seeing the beginning of a war with Austria, with the Germans marching into Prague and positioning themselves. Why are they doing this? It's a hard call. Mainly they want to cut Austria's funds so that they don't lose Russia to that player. Their only real opponent in terms of in the same position, which is the French-Italian combination, they weren't really in a good position to do much about, and the French just got their taxation, so this isn't a good time to hit them. Out of all their opponents, the best to hit that they could reach was actually the Austrians. So that's what they went for, and that's going to help the Russians. The Russians want to expand into the Balkans better. So it seemed like the best move at the time. Around the rondel again. Germans ended up, well, we got the Germans, Italians, and Russians, and they've all moved into the lead here. Germans way ahead at 12 victory points. And the Germans also are where the main change happened. The guy who had the Russians and Germans lost them to the English on the last investment opportunity, which was by Austria. A lot of money been thrown around from that. Still not seeing a lot of war now with Germany on England's side. They'll probably swing more against France than anything else and pull out of that Austrian territory. So that's kind of good news for them, but things are always very fluid in this. By the way, I want to give a shout out, as it were. The guy who introduced me to this game, I'm going to call him Butt Coffee. online dude, another troll, and you know this. He pointed me to the German site where you can play it online, Spiel or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I played a couple of games of this there, fell in love with it, ordered it, and it really kind of started me out on my recent spree of games. I mean, it got me back into Board Game Geek, so I figure he deserves some recognition on this one. Around and around we go. So we had investments from both France and England. France jumped over their investor opportunity, but we did see two things switch during those. One of the players who had nothing ended up stealing England, and the Austrian player ended up stealing Italy. We're seeing factories being built by both Germany and Russia, who are played by different people now, adjacent to each other. Just upgrading the economic position, potentially for the next tax round. That's always a kind of questionable thing, because you have to get the factory so early. By the time it gets around to the taxation, you may not own the country anymore, so you may not get the full benefit of that. Of course, you get some benefit down on the track, and we haven't seen any taxation this round, of course. All right, some more. Austria taxed, pulled itself up. It's still doing really horribly. There's only one person really invested in it, and not all that heavily. What we did see, however, was a couple investment plays on Italy and Germany, which pulled, let's see, Italy ended up back in the French hands. Big investment there. That's kind of questionable, although they're doing not too poorly. And let's see, what was the other one? The Germans. Oh, yeah, that didn't change much. But we saw a lot of money paid out of those pockets. Now, Russia did a production because hitting the investment space wasn't worth it. Maneuver space, there wasn't anybody they could really hit. No reason to try to gain something that far down on the rondel. So they hit the production and grabbed themselves another pile of troops. So they're ready for some serious expansion. That's probably going to come either at Austria or Germany's expense, maybe both, maybe Italy's, hard to tell. One thing we did see, though, was the French and British maneuvering here. The French started it off taking Belgium, advancing into Morocco, to the West Med, attacking both Italy and England, although they ended up buying a lot more shares in Italy, which maybe not that valuable, although all the Italian navies, etc., are still there, so that's still kind of powerful. But then the British came back and said, whoa, no you don't, and grabbed the Bay of Biscay and Portugal. So it's kind of ending up a wash there. The English came out ahead, as did the French. The Italians are the ones who paid for that. Just as here came my GMT order. I'm buying games like crazy, and I don't know what I'm doing. Another time around, a little bit of alcohol this time. Alright, so what did we see? And some music, no doubt. Got taxation for the Brits and French, and they pulled their position into second place, their total. But we've got the Italians and Germans coming up real fast, and the Germans are so far ahead. We did see some switches, though. We saw the Russians pick up the Germans with a big $16 million bond. That stole that away. And then we saw the additional player, and this is off the Russian income phase. The additional player pulled the Austrians off of somebody who only had the Austrians, just to get control of something that'll be able to play an investment shit, get a little extra money. The investor strategy really doesn't work, and I always forget that it doesn't work. It seems like a good idea because buying those cheap cards or those cheap bonds is a bonus in terms of how much overall payout you get, but controlling a country, especially when you're expanding the country, is tremendously valuable in the taxation round, which you want to pull in order to make your country valuable. Buying bonds in Austria isn't very valuable at this point. They're so far behind. But how many options do you have? I guess they could have grabbed... No, they couldn't have even grabbed Russia. So, you know, this was the best option that this guy had at that point. A lot of action this time. First of all, we got Italian and German taxation, which pushed them well ahead of the pack. We're seeing about $1 growth each on them, but getting into the 4 and 3 zones, that's going to guarantee some value there. And we saw big cash outlays in both cases. Italy swung over here, and Germany, I don't know if that, yeah, I think that switched hands over into this guy's hands with a big 20 in both cases. That was off the Austrian income phase. What we also saw was Russia doing a maneuver and going completely war bunny. They grabbed Norway, the Baltic. With all the German shares, he didn't really want to go all out on Germany, though. So he concentrated on both Italy and Austria as well. So he's just attacking everyone, grabbing some of the Balkans and grabbing Black Sea as well. That's just made Russia much, much more interesting. This guy over here. He may not hold them, however. There's a good chance somebody else is going to grab Russia before they get the taxation on that. But Russia becomes a more valuable country, there's no question.